Hey everybody. So moth trapping. Not a lot of people necessarily know about it, but a lot of people are very interested by it when they first see it. So I'm going to take you through the whole process of moth trapping from start to finish, and I'm also going to take you through the different types of traps you can use and show you that it can actually be done a lot cheaper than just going out and buying a trap. We have two types of main trap that people use. Both these types of trap will be used with 125 watt mercury vapor bulbs. It's very important to use mercury vapor and not a normal household bulb, because a normal household bulb doesn't supply the same wavelength of light that the mercury vapor does, which is much closer to that of the sun. If you used a normal bulb and a white sheet as your very base starting point, that would work. You would catch some moths, or they would land on the white sheet, should we say, but it won't be anything like the range of species that you'll get using mercury vapor. You could use an energy saving household bulb. That would be better than a tungsten based bulb, but still it's not quite right. You really do need to use the right type of bulb. This is a Skinner type trap. Square. This one's collapsible actually, and I bought this from Anglia Lepidopterist Supplies. I think with the electrics it was about £140. Quite simple how it works. It's like a lobster pot method. Basically we have a wooden bar across here normally with a bulb on it. The moth flies towards the bulb, can't do anything when it gets to the bulb, so it bounces off it, lands on these perspex sheets, falls down and goes into the hole in the bottom. At that point it will try and fly back up, but it can't get out because of the perspex, and then eventually it will go back down into the air boxes, and then it will settle for the night, and then the next day you can open the trap and see what you've caught. As I say, this is the Skinner type. I'm now going to show you my trap, which is actually a custom built trap, but it's more like the Robinson type. In this configuration my trap is very much like a Robinson trap. The standard Robinson trap would only be about 8-10 inches deep, but it would be round. It would have a perspex sheet around the outside like this, and then a bowl in the middle with the lamp, and it also has these dividers which are supposed to help the moth fall down into the hole that's in the bottom of the bowl. Now, a Skinner trap, as I say, that one cost me about £140 with the electrics. If you were to buy a Robinson trap, you'd be looking at about £80 more, I believe. But I personally would go, if you're looking at doing this sort of long term, is to make one, basically. Buy the electric setup. Now, as I say, this is a mercury vapor bulb. It's not a normal household bulb, so it can't be run off normal household electrics without having one of these in the middle, which is known as a cloak. It's basically a transformer. That is one of the disadvantages of having to use one of these bulbs, is the fact that you do need one of those to run it. But it obviously is necessary if you're going to actually try and catch any great number of moths. Now you might notice with mine that this is metal and not see-through. The only reason that they're see-through on the ones you buy is so you can actually see inside to see what you're catching. The original Robinson trap had a metal collar like this. Egg boxes need to go in the bottom, and the reason we do this is because moths want somewhere dark and small to hide away. So the next day when you go to get the trap in, they're not just flying around there settled and happy inside these. In the middle of the summer, when I would be catching maybe 200 to 300 moths in a night, I would use the 24 egg boxes, the big flat ones, and use about 3 deep all the way around, because the more egg boxes you have, obviously the more moths you have, more egg boxes, the less moths per egg box. If you only used a few and you caught 200 moths, it's almost impossible to go through it before loads of them fly off. So it's much better to have as many egg boxes as you can, but don't give them an easy point to escape out of that hole. Now, one of the most important things I want to point out here is that moth trapping is completely harmless. The main aim I have is to never harm a single moth in this method. There is no killing moths going on here. As I say, they go in under the egg boxes. Next day you can go through them and see what you've got, and then release them. Now, if you're planning to run the trap night after night after night, you're going to need to release those moths a good distance away from your garden. If you have a front garden, it's not really far enough. You're going to need to take them just down the road and tap them off into a hedge or something. If you're not going to trap every single night, if you're going to have a gap in the middle, it's fine, because they can disperse off and carry on doing their own thing. Basically, you don't want to keep moths away from doing what they want to do. Although you will find moths mating in a moth trap. It's quite a good way of them getting together, you know, it's a bit like a moth nightclub. So we've got the egg boxes in there. There's holes in the bottom of the trap anyway, because this is a flower pot. We've got a towel on top of that, so the water, if it rains, can seep through, but it doesn't pull for the moths to get stuck in and get covered in water. If they just stand on a damp towel, and that's fine. Okay, so the collar, as I explained on a Robinson, would go like this. But this is where the spicy trappers, we'll have to call it, comes in. I put it this way around. Now the reason for that, there's two main reasons. I like to have the biggest area for the moths to possibly get into, and then the smallest area for them to get out of, being the holes in the bottom of the bowl here. obviously if it was in the cone shape, they wouldn't naturally fall into the bowl. They would have to actually go into the bowl by choice, and obviously then you're reducing your trap size to this, not this entire trap. The other reason I have it this way round is because with making sure that the bulb's at the right height, it focuses and becomes like a massive spot lamp. Now you still get the light from the bulb going out into your garden, you're still at that angle, so anything in the hedges is going to see it and above. But for migrant moths that are flying at higher altitudes, I believe that a stronger light projecting upwards would gain you a better advantage of catching them. Whether this is true or not, I don't know, but it certainly works better for the larger entrants. And if that does work, well then it's just a benefit to it. The last bit that goes on top, and this is very ghetto, I need to fix this or at least make a better one, but it works. So that is a rain guard. Now the obvious reason for that is that this bulb gets very hot. If the rain lands on it, it could shatter it, and then you've got an issue with a broken bulb, and these cost £10 each, and also mercury vapour being around you. If you were near the trap, you might get, you know, a bit of mercury vapour coming at you, and you don't really want that because mercury is not very nice. Like this, I've used it for years, never had it break. I've had it in rainstorms and all sorts, it's been fine. So yes, that is my trap. As I say, it's custom built. A lot cheaper than some of the other bought traps for the fact that it's made out of obviously a flower pot, and I can get an awful lot more egg boxes in there to catch more moths. Also lifts it off the ground a little bit, and we just have a kitchen basin bowl in there holding it up, and the electrics which I bought for the original trap, but I actually now use on this one. Okay, so the moth trap is ready. I'm going to move it to the middle of the grass, and you'll join me again later on when I switch it on. Okay, so it's starting to get dark now. It's not quite as warm as I would have liked it to have been tonight. Basically, double figures in Celsius are generally good. Anything below that, and it's going to be a little bit cold. But I'm going to go for it. We've got a consistent wind from the southwest, which could bring a few migrant things with it. Who knows? But I can now show you the headlamp effect of this trap. You see what I mean now? All that light getting projected upwards into the sky. Whether it works or not, I don't know. But there we go. Anyway, let's see what it's like in the morning. Okay, it's the following morning. Now, much earlier this morning, I came out and put this stopper in, so none of the moths inside could get out. Well, the maybugs start now anyway. 1, 2, 3. Another 3 maybugs. You can see these ones are mating at the moment. Now, when you're going through the moth trap, the best thing to do is go through by taking one egg box out at a time and then putting in another thing. Now, for today, I'm just sticking them in the top of my trap. But normally I have a box. Another maybug. Another 5 maybugs and a flame shoulder. So there you go, it's the first moth, well, apart from the one I've seen down there. You see that? That's a flame shoulder. Another maybug. Now we've got a shuttle-shaped dart in there. That's a knot grass, which is spelled K-N-O-T, as in knot, as in rope knot grass. And that's a type of kitten. Down there, you see that? Another maybug. That there is a cetaceous Hebrew character. Another maybug. That one there is called a treble lines. You can tell why, because it's got 3 lines going across it. Another maybug. Another maybug. And another maybug. Okay, if you can see that one in there, that is a moth, even though it's bright yellow. It's called a brimstone. Another treble lines. Another maybug. Best moth of the night, not the rarest one. It's a lime hawk moth, but it's a big one. So that's basically the system. Now, if you're recording what you're catching, obviously as you take a new species out, like for each day, you'll write down the species and then do a tally line, and that way you can go through and count and add the species as you're going. There's a couple of other things you could really do with having moth pots, like these, specimen pots basically. It's just so you can put a moth in there if you want to see what it is for later. And you can also pop them in the fridge. Now that's one of the secrets to macro photography with insects. If you put them in a fridge, it won't harm them, it just cools them down and they become quite sort of sedentary, so they can't move around a lot, and you can do what you like with them basically. And then as they warm up, they can fly away. Also worth having pots like this, and yes, there is a moth in the UK which I need this pot for, and I should catch one this year. Another thing worth mentioning is you're going to need an identification guide to start with. Basically there's 2 to choose from. You have the traditional old Skinner book, which is photographic plates of dead moths, basically, so you get a true representation of what they are. But I actually find this easier to use. This is the wearing guide, and it's illustrated rather than photographed, but I actually find this a lot easier to use. If I'm trying to pin down an ID, I will go back to the Skinner to double check information in there because it's a bit more detailed. But this is probably the best bet for you if you're starting out moth trapping. Moths can be separated into 2 categories. micros and macros. Micros are the small moths, macros are the larger moths, although there is a bit of an interchange in the middle where some are bigger than the others, you know. Micros, there aren't really books for those. These are the macros. The problem with the micros is there's many of them. A lot of them are very difficult to tell apart. And then the book would just be huge, basically. So they haven't got a set guide for micros. But one you would like to pick up, and I think would be a good idea, is pyralid moths, because they are micros. They're not covered in here, but they're very distinctive, nice-looking moths, and you do come across them a lot. And some of the more rarer, interesting moths you're likely to catch will be pyralids. And they're also attracted to light. This means if you have your windows open in the evening, there's a good chance at this time of the year you're going to find one flying into your house.